This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
In the name of God, amen. We are doing a new thing. We are doing a different thing. And we are inviting you to enter in to Holy Week. And so we have not rushed to judgment, if you will. Entry into Jerusalem, hip hip hooray, Hosanna in the highest, crucify him. It's a week process, folks. A week. It doesn't happen overnight. Holy Week. Holy Week. Expectations. What are our expectations? What do we look for? What do we desire? A Messiah, and some wait still. And some wait still. I tell you two stories. They are related, and they are about expectations. A while back, 1964 to be exact, a man by the name of Gene Smith wrote a novel. Well, it wasn't a novel, it was biographical. When the Cheering Stops. And it was about Woodrow Wilson. The final days of the First World War and the intervening period of time. Expectations. Messiah, peacemaker, wonderful. And he made a trip to Europe at the end of the war, and he was hailed as this incredible leader. And look what he'd done. And then he began to encounter the reality of the world and discovered that the leaders of those countries who had fought the war to end all wars were a little more interested in self-interest than world peace, the peace of Jerusalem. And they weren't so enamored of him. And then he got back to this country, and the Senate, funny thing, there's a familiarity here, refused to pass the League of Nations. And we entered into one of the most difficult periods in our own nation's history of looking inward and how wonderful we are, but the rest of the world just has to go away. Isolationism. Isolationism. Expectations. The war to end all wars. Peace in our time. Second story. Both of my grandfathers were career naval officers. They happened to live next door to each other, the Norfolk Navy Yard, in the 20s and 30s, various times. So in fact, my parents knew each other through high school. My mother graduated from high school in 1934, and my dad's father received orders to Mare Island, back to the West Coast. And when they decided they were going to visit family in Germany, in what was Ostpreußen, East Prussia, Danzig as it was then, Gdansk as it is today. And they were going to travel through Europe and visit this family before my dad came back to finish his senior year on the West Coast, and so forth. So my mother went on this trip, and my mother was an amazing woman in many regards, but her observations were, in many regards, profound. One, on a very personal level, growing up in the South, she discovered that green beans could be tasty and green. But the other thing she discovered was, as they drove from Danzig to Berlin, on a particular day, I believe it was in July, but I won't swear to that, It was the day von Hindenburg died. Now, if you remember your history, someone had become, if not vice chancellor, a very important person in the German government at the time. Adolf Hitler was his name, if you've forgotten. And my mother talks about that trip in which these people in brown shirts and black shirts and uniforms appeared. My mother referred to it as out from underneath rocks and out of the crevices in the ground. And the only reason I mention that, it is about expectations. The war to end all wars. And then what entered in? Expectations. Jesus enters Jerusalem, and they looked for some way to kill him. Sometimes, and it's not a direct quote, but we've heard it more than once. In order for evil to prevail, it is for good people to do nothing. And how many times do we keep silence because it's politically correct? We're in the midst of a political season yet again in this country. And in order for evil to prevail, good people only need keep silent. But for Jesus in Jerusalem, he goes to the temple during this Holy Week, not all at one time, Holy Week, and clears the temple of the money changers. Number one, the coin they were using had the image of Caesar. Blasphemy, idolatry within Jewish law. But they had them over the people over a buckle, over a barrel. How were they going to buy their sacrifice without these coins? A den of robbers. How often do we choose the easy way, the simple way, the don't make waves kind of way? That was not Jesus' way, just to let you know. It was radical in what he had to do and say. It remains radical. Who we are and whose we are. A reminder that this is the man who was willing to offer himself on a cross for our salvation. And we find it difficult, and yes, I know the liturgical scholars said we'll put it all together because people don't come on Good Friday because they don't like that nasty story. Didn't work. Because it makes us feel uncomfortable. It's painful. We're out of control, and we cry in anguish and pain for ourselves and for others who have felt the anguish, and those of us who have experienced anguish and pain. We don't like it. We feel out of control. We feel vulnerable. We cry. We don't like to look. We don't like that agony. And yet that agony was done for us. For us. For us and our salvation. Sunday after Sunday, with the exception of this Sunday, we say the creed, the hope that is within us, the hope and the promise that is ours, and yet we shirk back because we're uncomfortable and it's painful. Expectations. What did we expect of life? Only happiness? Only joy? Did not Jesus say that he came to bring us life, all of it, good, bad, and indifferent at times. The invitation for us is to enter this Holy Week, to walk this way that he offers to us, to hear, to participate in these events, to remember who we are and whose we are, and the one that died on a cross was as a result of incredible love for each and every one of us. Amen.